they paying you?
It's a good song.
It actually is. Not like they're paying you to dance to it, so
The house music.
filled with a cough that has now disappeared from Monday morning. I'm very annoyed by this cough.
Dial star
It only works on the
894 to get
weekends.
started. Powered by First Bank.
Hello, people. This is Frank Donga, and you're listening to Smooth
And what
Breakfast.
about you? You have
The
20 seconds
Smooth
to answer.
Breakfast presents the
plenty.
headline.
I thought you have 20 seconds
How's
to
the
answer.
It
Your
was
weekend?
long, busy.
In a good way?
Current affairs.
In a work way.
Freshly
Oh,
pressed.
sorry.
On Smooth 98.1.
Tata, I've missed you. Hello. I was just saying.
You first.
All right, we are in studio. Smooth 98.1. It is gone past 7:30 for a Monday morning. This is Smooth Breakfast with Guy Baker.
And Choco Martins and you. Good morning. Welcome to Freshly Pressed 981.
Yes, now joining us for today's episode of The Good Show, Freshly Pressed, we have got your two favorite analysts, actually, Chetanwaze and Mr. C. Good morning and good morning.
Bravo au lion.
Okay, can we sort that out? Thank you so much. Perfect. Now, what language did you just speak to me? I wasn't.
Bravo au lion. Didn't you watch the match yesterday?
Okay, sorry.
Oh, yeah, that was
We
Some
were
two
distracted.
Senegalese.
All right, so let's keep going. We've got you two. Make sure you send your WhatsApp messages into 0809 444 981. And you can go and watch us live as we stream live up on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. We'll be taking your comments up on that platform. And of course, Twitter is available. Use the hashtag freshlypressed981. Okay, so gentlemen, are we ready? Shall we dive in? Okay. Oh, bien sûr.
You should
Okay.
say Senegalese.
For today,
All right.
for today.
All through,
Okay.
try do it all through the show. Let's see if you can sustain
Oh,
it.
we'll see.
You really want that?
Let's see if you can
Do you
sustain
really
it.
want that kind of? Let's move in. From the Punch newspaper, Presidency slams Financial Times editor over article on Nigeria. Now, in an open letter to the editor of the Financial Times, this is the Africa editor, David Pilling, senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity, Garba Shehu, said the caricature of a government sleepwalking into disaster, talking about the article, which was titled "What is Nigeria's Government For?" is predictable from a correspondent who jets briefly in and out of Nigeria on the same flight he so criticizes. He went on to say he highlights rising banditry in my country as proof of such slumber. What he leaves out are the security gains made over 2 presidential terms. He also said that Boko Haram used to administer an area the size of Belgium at inauguration. Now they control no territory. Chessa, have you recovered from your choking fit to get into the analysis?
So do we do this in French or do we do this?
Let's do it in English.
The cardio was challenging. So I think if you read Femi additional statements, I think the part that pained him the most was that statement about the first class tickets.
No, it's Garbashev, not Femi
sorry,
Adesina.
Garbashev, sorry. I think the part that pained him the most was that part about first class tickets to this. If you the Financial Times article, which was basically the title was "What is Nigeria's government for?" It appeared on January 31st.
Mhm.
From my point of view, two things come out here. It's what Nigerian governments respond to. And I think for the record, it's important to point out that this is not just the Buhari government's problem, although they have amplified it.
Which, by the way, article does say.
Exactly.
Saying that even if the vice president, who could be an interesting president, comes in, that the system will still overcome.
The system. And again, if you read, I think it's a book that I'll recommend for everybody to read is Martin Meredith's Fate of Africa. It's basically it's a problem that is widespread across the continent. It goes all the way back to when a lot of Africans talk with pride about Mansa Musa, that middle-aged Malian emperor who went on a pilgrimage to Mecca and caused inflation for about a decade after he passed through because he carried 60,000 slaves and a lot of gold. We seem to have this problem of trying to impress white people. So when you read an article from the Financial Times that says or summarizes what Nigerian media has been saying for a long time, and the government is not bothered to respond to the Nigerian media. And then suddenly, Peeling jets in because Garabashew was right. He jetted in and jetted out. And David Peeling, if you read his pieces, it appears to me that whenever he has a deadline and he doesn't have anything to write, he'll just open Nigeria page and pull out something from the archives and
Oh,
write
wow.
That's what it appears to me.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, we have to ask a fundamental question. Did he lie in the piece? And the answer is no, sadly. Abuja to London Heathrow is one of the most profitable routes for British Airways, not in terms of how much it rakes in. I mean, it doesn't near, for example, London Heathrow to JFK. It doesn't near London Heathrow to Oliver Tambo. But in terms of percentage profit, as in based on frequency of flights and how much they make per flight and all of that, it is one of their most profitable, if not, I think about their second most profitable. A business class seat retails for about 1.5 million naira, and the planes are typically two-thirds full business class. So that is highly profitable for them. Now, the main thing that he talked about, gains in security, this, the language I would like to use to describe it cannot be used on air.
Thank you.
But last year we saw a 47 increase in number of Nigerians killed in violent attacks, up 47% from 2020. 2020 was worse than 2019, which in its turn was worse than 2018. After this government came in, its security issues decreased, as in it demonstrably decreased from 2015 to 2016, but it reached the trough in 2017. And then since 2017, it has been a year-on-year increase in security incidents and fatalities. The numbers are there, they're publicly available. I analyze these numbers for a
We
living.
have
So
discussed
what's he
them
talking
at length
about?
on the show.
And then you have the size of government, which David Peeling talked about. Size of government. There's a fundamental question that David Peeling asked, which was in the title. What is Nigeria's government for? All of us here, we provide our power, we provide our security, we provide the only thing that we don't provide probably is our roots. So what really is the government for?
Well, Cheta, it was a question he asked and he answered for itself. But we don't have time to dwell because we do have other stories for today's show.
We could dwell on this for the entire show.
We really
but we
could.
have other stories
Which
to
is
talk
why
about.
you have Cheta up on Twitter, up on all social media platforms as at Chickster. And we've got Mr. C. So we'd love to get to you for our next story.
Okay, so the next story is from the Punch newspaper. It talks about external reserves. Says external reserves slides to 4-month low at $39.98 billion. Now, to put the context of this, the external reserves have fallen below the $40 billion mark to the lowest point in over 3 months. Figures from the Central Bank of Nigeria. They've revealed this basically. So how bad is it for Nigeria? Or how bad does this look?
Well, it's not necessarily bad. The story is light on details, but it is correct that our external reserves fell and they've fallen to a level below the $40 billion mark. Now, it's instructive to note that the foreign reserves are meant to help us process our balance of trade payments and other related transactions. So it's expected that there will be discrepancy, not discrepancies, the figures will fall and rise as the months roll by. So there's nothing earth-shattering about this decline. And it must be noted that there must have been some payments that were due and were duly processed. So there isn't really much flesh to this story. I tried to look for more details online. I didn't get any. So it's what it is.
It is said that we made some significant amounts of money between November and December. Well, not significant.
We are paying
$4 billion.
No.
See.
Kaidi, that $4 billion was because of the IMF special drawing right and some World Bank loan.
Okay.
So it's not like we did anything. It's not like we did anything remarkable or intelligent on our part.
So also they're saying
Kaidi,
that we're not
see.
making any money because of the insecurity in Nigeria.
No, that's-
But the thing is, we are paying BC, and most of after 2003 when we got that whole debt relief stuff, and then like a punch drunk guy, we started borrowing again. The lenders give themselves. So pretty much all of Nigeria's external loans now are what they call ISPO loans, irrevocable standing payments order, which is that by the time we make that our small oil money, and it's very small for the record, by the time we make that small money wherever we make it, before the money comes to us, the basic people collect their share, they collect their cut from source. You understand? It's one of the reasons our revenues are rising up. And all of these things contribute to the so-called external reserves. But we must also talk about the weird and perverse economic thinking that makes us measure the health of our economy by external reserves and by the value of the naira to the dollar. Why can't we measure it by productivity?
Oh, yeah, wouldn't that be a
So
great one?
just to chip this in, we're
Mhm.
run. I fear we're running into a situation
Mhm.
where lenders will be reluctant to give us money. Now
They
the
can't
Chinese,
afford it. There's no point.
the Chinese now are reluctant to give us loans.
Will you give Nigeria a loan?
It makes sense. 0809444091.
All right, got your messages coming in. Joseph from Silver State says, so that's nope. Let's move on. I will need some time with that
To
message to
rephrase
get it
that.
out in its in the way you need it to come out in. Jim says the decrease in 2015 was due to the onslaught by Jonathan before the elections. It took the terrorists 1 year to recover, and since then they have waxed stronger. Says Jim. Whilst D from Alausa says, good analysis and introduction, Cheta. All right, then. Let's move on from the New Telegraph. We've got this headline: ICPC recovered and retrained 166.5 billion naira assets in 2.5 years. This, according to their midterm report. It was contained in the Commission's midterm performance reports 2019 to June 2021, and it represents an increase of 378% over the assets recovery target of 44 billion naira. This is under the Commission's strategic plan for 2019 to 2023. Now, Mr. C, as we go on into the article, it goes on to say that the assets were houses, vehicles, electronics, jewelry, accessories, so on and so forth. However, looking at something that was quite interesting that I saw, talked about that in that same period that the commission forced 326 contractors of abandoned projects across the 6 geopolitical zones to go back to what they were assigned to do. What's your take on all of this?
Okay, thank you, Shopper. So the ICPC has posted seemingly impressive numbers, and on the face of it, we should say kudos and job well done.
But that seemingly seems to suggest otherwise. Go
So
ahead.
the reason why I chose the phrase seemingly is because we're yet to get the Auditor General's report for the same period of time. Because when we get the Auditor General's report for the same period of time, we can then put into proper perspective the figures as declared by the ICPC. Now, beyond that, the ICPC says it's recovered this money. The question is, where is this money? You've recovered it or you've restrained it. So there's a portion that was recovered, there's a portion that has been frozen. So my understanding of restraint that's used in the article is that they should have obtained court orders freezing those sums of money. So the monies that were actually recovered, where are they? The jewelry that was recovered, where's the jewelry? The houses, have they been sold? If they've not been sold, what's happening to the houses? Are they being allowed to fall into disrepair? The cars, where are the cars? So there are a lot of questions. Now, beyond all of this, the contractors that were seemingly forced us to return to site, maybe it's a good step because they weighed the cost benefits question. Is it cheaper to take them to court and prosecute them? Or is it cheaper to get them back? So fine. Now that you force them to go back, who's monitoring what they're doing? Because they've already proven that they have a penchant for disappearing. And given that they were given an original plan, original project scope, who determines or who ensures that they meet or fulfill that scope? So these are questions that still remain unanswered. Now, in the same article, they said that they secured, they filed 200 cases in court and got 56 convictions. That's a very poor ratio. That's about just over a quarter, 25%. Now, the question I would have loved to ask them if I was a journalist is, in the same period, out of the 200 cases, how many cases did you lose? Then the cases that have not been determined yet, what's the number? Where are they? When should we expect judgments? So these are all questions, but on the face of it, until we get further evidence, kudos for the job of it.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you very
Mr.
much
C.
for that, Mr. C. Don't forget, we see messages up on our YouTube platform as well, and that is at Smooth 91 FM Lagos. Okay, so get your thoughts in.
Yes, Joey Echo actually says, good question, Cheta. Why can't we measure our economy through productivity?
And also up on our WhatsApp platform, this one says, "How about now? Can you say there's impact from the external reserve story? So what happened to the Eurobond that was raised in January for that amount to have flowed out? How about do the calculation?" So that's talking to you, Mr. C. That's from Mulu Ashbad. Real quick though, let's move on to our next story. This one's from the Punch. Still comes to you, still, Mr. C. The NIMC portal breaks down. Banks, telcos, passport issuance office, they all suffer. Now, thousands of telecommunications subscribers nationwide seeking to retrieve their lost subscriber identity model cards or acquire new lines temporarily have been left stranded following a technical glitch in the National Identity Management Commission portal, which basically has grounded SIM-related services. What do you make of the story?
So thank you, Kadi. It's a very disturbing story because this server, the server of the National Identity Management Commission, went down on Tuesday last week. It's been 7 days since then. Now it's affected the telecom companies. It's affected the immigration services. Now explain how it affects the telecommunication services. If you want to buy a new SIM card or you want to replace your SIM card, they've now put in place regulations which make it mandatory for the telecoms companies to access the NIMC website to confirm the NIN details that have been provided by the applicant. And if that process isn't completed, then they cannot issue you a new SIM card or replace your SIM card.
Okay.
Previously, the practice was you could go there with your with some form of ID. No, some form of ID, your driver's license, your voter's card, or even your work ID, or even a sworn affidavit. But now they insist you must access the NIMC portal. Now that hasn't happened. So imagine the number of man hours that have been lost by people who've been approaching the telecoms company since Tuesday last week to get it sorted out. Now, that's the telecom companies, and they're losing revenue, by the way.
Okay.
Now you go to immigration, new passport applications, you have to provide your NIN details. Immigration has to be able to confirm that the NIN details you provided actually correspond, tally with the individual before them. Now that has not been able to happen. And some people need to travel. That's the whole essence of getting a passport. Some people need to travel immediately. Some people need to travel down the line. Now it's a very disturbing development because the NIMC claims that it's a routine maintenance process.
And it's been 7 days.
It's been 7 days. So they came up with.
How does routine maintenance go on for? And do we get warnings about routine maintenance?
Former IT guy, masters in computer networks and internet security. Not possible. 7 days, never.
No, so that was the second story they brought up. The first story was they admitted it was down, but that their service provider couldn't give them any indication of when it will be back up. Now they're advising that they switch to a secondary system, which requires the generation of tokens for each single transaction. Now the telecoms companies are reluctant, understandably, to go through that because it entails a lot of time, but more importantly, money and resources that weren't actually budgeted for this. Now, beyond all of this, there's a security implication for the entire country. How does the NIMC have only one server? How does that happen? In most decent run companies and organizations, you have a main server, you have a backup server, you have a remote server. This is not rocket science. So why we're still discussing this in 2022 beats my imagination. And let's hope that this will be done.
'"
'Sometime soon.
All right, thank you so much for that, Mr. C. Let's move on real quick to our next story.
Okay, next story coming in from the Punch newspaper. NIN SIM linkage. Why security agencies shouldn't have access to subscribers' data. Sarah writes Buhari. The CSO is asking Mr. President to use his, in their words, good offices and leadership position to urgently review and rescind your reported approval for security agencies to allow people to access people's personal details via NIN SIM linkage without due process of a law. Now, Mr. C, coming back to you for this one. In this digital age and age of data just going everywhere, people's data being collected, what say you about Nigerians' privacy? And when it comes to data, do we have any? And do we have any agencies that can protect us?
Okay, so we do have that. We do have data protection laws, even though they're not as advanced or detailed as similar pieces of legislation in other countries. Now, I have, I'm really disturbed by the president signing this approval, and it's very disturbing because under the Constitution we're guaranteed the right of privacy. It's guaranteed, right? Now, no, under the Constitution it is guaranteed. Forget that the
It's
executive.
guaranteed,
So
but
now,
that's the word.
now the executive over the years, and it's not just limited to this APC contraption, have deliberately and intentionally and consistently violated this principle. Now, what this portends is we have law enforcement agencies, we have security agencies who have proven time and time again that they're not interested in upholding the tenets of the Constitution. They're not interested in upholding the constitutionally guaranteed rights.
What's
And it's
constitution?
Cheta, there's a 1999 Constitution. Even if you have personal
Secret 28 of 1998
Cheta, it is now the Constitution.
Now, hold
that
on.
nobody believes in.
We have the sidebar. Can we get back to the main focus? But when it comes to security agencies, when it comes to people's security, there's always been a fine line walked between security, protecting security, and freedom, access to privacy.
In serious countries, right? They have security issues, but the security agencies, they have judges who are assigned to handle these matters, and they carry compelling material before the judges give them the orders they're seeking. Here we like to put the cart before the horse. We are not ready to carry out investigations. We just want to jump and get information which ordinarily they should not be privy to. Now, it begs the question, what is the Honorable Minister of Justice doing that the President signs such an approval?
All right, we wish we had time to go further into that, but we have questions here and we have messages we're going to get into real quick. But the next story comes to you, Cheta. It talks about Lassa fever. So the NCDC registers 40 deaths, 4 health workers infected. And this is all in January from the Guardian newspaper. But what do you make of the story?
This so I think that this particular story is just a commentary on how we treat stuff that doesn't apparently affect um, the high and mighty or the chattering classes. The Lassa epidemic, it's been going on since at least since December 2018. It hardly makes the news. It's restricted. At the end of the brutal fact that Lassa is largely a poor man's disease. Its main vector are rats. When they urinate on things like Gary that are not properly stored. So it's the possibility of Lassa affecting the 5 of us in this studio is very limited. Um, that is problematic because a functioning society is one that takes care of the most vulnerable as well as its best. Contrast with the panic slash freak out that has happened with respect to COVID, which has not affected or which has in a shorter period killed just about the same number of people that the Lassa epidemic has killed in a slightly longer period. Um, but then you look at the fact that we hardly talk about Lassa. It hardly makes the news. There, we are also having an on and off cholera outbreaks. We
Okay.
hardly talk about them because at the end of the day, these are diseases that are restricted to the lower classes in many respects. It's a commentary on society, um, and we need a mindset shift.
Now, very quickly, let's take a look at your messages up on 0809 444 WhatsApp and youtube.com/smooth 981 FM Lagos. Now, we got that one in a message in from Baba Femi up on YouTube who says, NIMSI server didn't just go down last week. The functionality of their server has been inconsistent over time. I'm speaking from personal experience. To amend my NIN information took over 2 months.
Hmm.
Let that sink in. And message in from Said says Nigeria has one of the most advanced data protection policy. Okay.
I once attended a lecture at Imperial College in London in public health. I said Nigeria has the second best public health policy after Cuba. I'll never forget that day. It's not about having the policy, it's about how we implement.
Reality, people, reality.
This one says, morning guys, Karim Gua here. He says, all I can say about the NIMC 7-day maintenance is, well, Rolls-Royce solutions for Volkswagen problems, they don't have to make it complicated. And he says this, I promise you, basically.
Okay, and David says, Chata's statement, why do we measure progress of our economy with exchange rates rather than productivity? That's the same question I keep asking. Smart thinking people are few, apparently, says David. Chata, you are one of those few. Let's go on to our Punch newspaper. Now, Chata, you said something that struck a chord with me, and especially in terms of this story. You were talking about measuring the country by the way it treats its more vulnerable people. Now we've got this one in federal government school feeding suffers setback, pupils wait in vain for vendors. Because we don't have too much time, I'm just going to open up the floor to you, Cheta, for your take on this and a little bit of a backstory to this.
I don't know if there's a backstory. One of the key things because an undue amount of children that are out of school, and one of the things that was identified by this government before they came into power was that so feeding children would be a sure way of attracting students to school. Some numbers: malnutrition disorders this affect more than 42% of school-age children in the country, and it's this food malnutrition feeding that are responsible or that is held responsible for 49% of absenteeism of primary school age children. This is according to UNICEF. And I will say that attacks on education is becoming very quite significant, especially the perception that they give. One of the reasons I wasn't around for most of last week was that I was actually at a UNICEF/Ministry of Education conference in Abuja where I made a presentation on this issue. Having said that, the school feeding program went ahead. It is laudable. I think it's one of the few things that this government has done that I would say they tried on.
Hmm.
But as always with this country, and quite unfortunate, which is what this country their story is saying, something seems to be going wrong. So you have, for example, in LGEA Primary School in Itimokwe Makodi, a pupil told the correspondent that had only be fed for 3 days. What they didn't say was it 3 days that week or 3 days in the year so far? I mean, these little holes in the reporting can actually not give actually end up not giving us a complete picture.
Hmm.
Nevertheless, in a country where we have officially, or well, not officially, the officials will never admit it, um, but at least according to organizations such as UNICEF, we have about 12.3 million children out of school. UBEC admits to 10.5 million, which both figures will make it the highest in the world. It's something that we need to do something about. So when you have a school feeding program, which in its own little way was contributing to making a dent in those figures, we need to treat it like an egg.
Now, looking at the other side of the story, we don't have any time to for that. However, the other side of the story, from the vendor side, they're saying that they're not being paid, and when they are being paid, that they're being paid in two tranches, and due to the high inflation
Like
in
I
the
said,
country,
like I said,
no.
we need to treat it like an egg. So it's one of the laudable programs, but something clearly is going wrong.
Oh yeah, you don't
Clearly.
say. All right, that is that for today's episode of Freshly Pressed. The one article we didn't get to is one that will come up again. Don't you worry, because it's the same thing that keeps coming up. Buhari joins religious leaders begging ASUU to discard strike. For now, though, it's time for us to say goodbye. However, the conversation continues up on Twitter, and all you need to do is find these two handles at the that's a D, Mr. C with two E's, and at Chickster. Find them. All right, and keep talking. Coming up, we have got Lagos Talks at 10 past 8. Stick with us.
You first. First Bank.
All right, thank you
The
so much.
headlines.
No,
The story.
no. The door! Hold on.